I dropped by my son-in-law's place, but my wife's car was parked outside. What I heard inside destroyed me. I wasn't planning on stopping by that day. Honestly, I was just passing through the neighborhood, coming back from the hardware store. Needed a new wrench for the garage, and my phone battery had died, so I couldn't even call ahead to see if anyone was home. But I figured, why not surprise my son-in-law, Jake? He always appreciated when I popped in, even if it was just for a quick hello and coffee. It's the kind of easy, friendly relationship we had, or I thought we had, but then I saw her car. My wife's Honda parked right at the edge of Jake's driveway. At first, I didn't think anything of it. I figured maybe she had business nearby. Maybe she stopped by too, after all, he's family, but something felt off. The way it was tucked halfway behind a hedge, like it was deliberately hidden. My gut pulled tight. I parked a little further down the street and walked back quietly, staying out of sight. I don't even know why I did that. Instinct maybe, some buried fear I didn't want to admit to myself. As I crept closer, I heard voices through the open side window. I recognized them instantly, Jake and my wife. They were laughing. At first, it sounded harmless, like old friends sharing a joke. But then her voice dropped lower, softer. I heard her say something that made my chest cave in on itself. You know, he still has no idea. He thinks I'm just out running errands. And Jake responded with this small, smug laugh. A sound I never want to hear again. Well, the less he knows, the better. I froze. My ears rang. Everything inside me screamed to bust through the door, but I didn't move. I just stood there, listening, my heart pounding so loud I thought they might hear it. I should probably introduce myself. My name is Thomas Garrison. I'm 61 years old, former electrical engineer, retired now. Been married to my wife, Eleanor, for 36 years. We raised our daughter, Claire, with love and discipline. Built a life together, bought a house, paid our debts. Took vacations every summer. We weren't perfect, no one is, but I believed we were solid, loyal, devoted. Until that day, until that moment. Until I stood outside my own son-in-law's house and heard my wife. My wife, speaking in a tone I hadn't heard directed at me in years. Flirtatious, warm, intimate. And what followed shattered every truth I'd clung to for almost 4 decades. But before I tell you what happened next, let me take you back, because stories like this, they don't explode overnight. They simmer, they stew. They rot quietly beneath the surface until one day, they spill over and poison everything. This is the story of how I lost everything I thought I knew, and how I chose to take everything back in a way no one saw coming. I met Eleanor in college. She was the kind of woman who walked into a room and made everyone turn their heads, not because she was loud or flashy, but because she had presence. Grace, a quiet strength in her eyes that made you feel like she saw straight through the noise and into the heart of things. I was a wiry, overly focused engineering student who barely knew how to make eye contact, much less flirt. But she noticed me. I still remember the day she offered me a granola bar in the library. Said I looked like I hadn't eaten in days. She wasn't wrong. That little moment turned into coffee, and coffee turned into study sessions. Before I knew it, I was skipping robotics lab just to walk her to class. I fell fast and hard, and when I proposed 4 years later, broke, terrified, and madly in love, she said yes like it was the most obvious thing in the world. We didn't have much, but we built slowly. We bought a modest home on the edge of town. She worked part-time at a local bookstore while I started at a small engineering firm. We struggled, sure, had our share of arguments, but we had something that felt rare. And when our daughter Claire was born, everything changed. In the best way. She had Eleanor's eyes, deep, sharp, thoughtful, and my temper. God help us all. I remember staying up nights with Eleanor, taking shifts when Claire was teething, rocking her back and forth while humming some old lullaby Elinor's mother used to sing. We were a team, I was certain of that, so what changed? I've asked myself that question 1,000 times since that day at Jake's window. And if I'm being honest, it didn't change all at once. It was slow, like watching water boil, nothing, 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 then suddenly steam. The first sign was how quiet Elinor had become, not the peaceful kind of quiet, but distant, distracted. She started leaving the house more, said she was helping a friend with a charity project downtown. I didn't question it at first. She was always generous like that. But then she started coming home later. Her phone, once left casually on the counter, was now glued to her side, face down. She stopped laughing at my jokes, or worse, she'd pretend to laugh, but her eyes would drift elsewhere, like her body was with me, but her mind was far, far away. And Jake, he came into the picture only a few years ago. Married our daughter when she was 27. Good-looking guy, charismatic, smart, a financial advisor, the type that people trust way too easily because he's got that smile, you know. The kind that makes you think he's incapable of lying. I liked him at first. He treated Claire well, brought her flowers, called me sir, which always felt a bit forced, but I brushed it off. He and I would watch football together sometimes when they visited. He even called me for advice now and then, mostly surface, level stuff, nothing deep. But over time, Claire started talking less about him. Their visits grew shorter. Her tone changed. I once asked her if everything was okay between them, and she gave me this half-smile and said, "Marriage is complicated, Dad, don't worry about it." I should have paid attention. I should have dug deeper, but I didn't want to believe there was anything wrong. Not with them, not with Elinor. Not with any of it. I wanted to believe the story I had written in my head for years, the story where we were still that same family, bound by love, forged through struggle, unshakable. But standing outside Jake's window that day, hearing their voices, hearing her voice, playful, intimate, lo, that story fell apart. "Do you think he suspects anything?" she asked. "No," Jake said, with that same smug tone. "He's too wrapped up in his garage and his morning crossword puzzles to notice." They laughed. They laughed like I was some old fool, a clueless relic, a joke. I backed away from the window, heart racing, hands shaking. My palms were cold with sweat. My knees felt like they might give out. I got back in my car and just sat there for a long time, staring at the steering wheel. My mind refused to accept what I had just heard. I kept trying to find another explanation. Maybe they were joking. Maybe it was some horrible misunderstanding. Maybe, but deep down I knew what I had heard. I knew what it meant, and the worst part. I didn't know who I was more furious with, her or myself. Because I saw the signs, I ignored them. I trusted too easily. I believed in something that hadn't been real for a long time. But that day, that moment outside Jake's house, it woke something up in me. Something I didn't even know was still alive. I wasn't going to be the fool anymore. I wasn't going to be the man everyone pitied, the man who got cheated on by his wife with his daughter's husband and just silently faded into the background. No, if they wanted betrayal, they were going to learn what consequences felt like. Not rage, not violence. Something colder, something smarter, something final. I didn't go home right away. I drove, just drove. Miles and miles with no destination. Through town, past the lake, onto the back roads that Elinor and I used to take when we were young. Back when the world felt smaller, and the future was still a blank page waiting to be written. But now I felt like I was reading someone else's book, a cruel, twisted rewrite of the life I thought I'd built. I parked by the water and just sat in the quiet. The sky was gray that afternoon, not dramatic, not stormy. Just dull fitting. I thought about confronting them right away, barging in, shouting, demanding answers. But what would that have solved? They'd lie, cover, twist the truth. People like that always do, and I didn't want apologies. I didn't want tears. I didn't want some half-hearted confession wrapped in excuses. I wanted clarity and control, so I went home and I said nothing. I made dinner that night like I always did, pasta with Eleanor's favorite son, dried tomato sauce. She walked in just as I was setting the table, smiling that same warm smile she'd been flashing for years. "Smells amazing," she said, setting her purse down, and I just nodded like nothing had happened, like I hadn't stood outside a window and heard my life fall apart. She talked about her day, some nonsense about the grocery store and a neighbor's sick cat. I nodded, asked a few questions, pretended, and the entire time I was watching her, noticing the way she glanced at her phone every few minutes. The subtle change in her tone when she mentioned Claire and Jake, the pause, the faint tightening in her jaw. She thought she was subtle, but I was seeing her now, really seeing her, for the first time in years, and it was like staring at a stranger. The next morning, I started putting the plan together. Not a grand scheme. Not revenge porn or some wild takedown. No, I'm not that man, but I'm not stupid either. I began by checking her phone bill. We share the account, so it wasn't hard to log in. And just like I suspected, dozens of calls to Jake's number. Late nights, mid-mornings, lunchtime. A pattern so obvious, it felt like they weren't even trying to hide it. I printed the logs. Then I checked the location history from her car's GPS. Another feature she probably forgot existed. She'd been to Jake's neighborhood 5 times in the last 2 weeks, and not just during the day. Once she was there at 9:47 p.m. She came home just before midnight and told me she'd been helping her friend fix a website. A website? I felt something in my chest go hollow, but I stayed calm. I gathered more receipts, timestamps, referencing her alibis against the places she claimed to be. Little inconsistencies, each one another crack in the porcelain. I wasn't doing this to punish her. Not yet. I was doing it to confirm what I already knew. Because when the time came, when the moment finally arrived, I didn't want to walk in with just feelings. I wanted proof, and then there was Claire, our daughter, the center of my world, and now the one person I didn't know how to protect anymore. I started watching her closely too, calling her more often, asking subtle questions about Jake. Her answers were hollow, filtered, like she was choosing each word carefully, trying not to let too much slip. At first, I wondered if she knew. If she'd already discovered what they were doing. If she was silently enduring the same pain I was. But no, that wasn't it. She was hiding something, yes, but it wasn't knowledge. It was suspicion. A quiet fear that something was off, but she couldn't quite name it. And that, more than anything, broke me. Because Claire deserved better. She deserved a husband who honored her, and a mother who didn't poison her own daughter's home. So now, it wasn't just about me anymore, it was about her. About making sure she saw the truth not from my lips, not through second-hand whispers, but with her own eyes. I needed her to witness it. I needed her to see what they'd become. So I waited, plotted, gathered more. And I made sure every step I took was quiet, deliberate, and untraceable. Because when I finally pulled the trigger, I wanted the fallout to be clean, undeniable. Not a firestorm, a scalpel. I didn't sleep much in those days. Not because of rage that had passed, mostly. What remained was something colder, a kind of detached focus, like I was assembling a puzzle with trembling hands. Piece by piece, detail by detail, the problem wasn't just Eleanor or Jake. It was the lie, the web they'd spun around all of us, around my family, around Claire, and I realized something important. If I exposed them too soon, if I ran into the fire screaming with proof and accusations, Claire wouldn't believe me. Or worse, she'd think I was having a breakdown, that I was jealous, losing it. That's how good manipulators are. They make the truth look unstable, so I stopped thinking like a husband. I stopped thinking like a father. And I started thinking like a hunter, quiet, patient, focused. The first thing I did was make sure Eleanor felt safe. She had no idea I knew. She still kissed my cheek in the morning, asked about the bills, folded my laundry. She thought she was balancing two lives perfectly. And Jake, he probably thought he was untouchable. He never even looked nervous around me. Arrogance makes men sloppy. That was his mistake. I began visiting Claire more often. Invited her out to lunch. Stopped by her house with leftovers. I'd cooked just little excuses to see her face, feel her energy. And every time I looked into her eyes, I saw the weight she was carrying, the unspoken anxiety. She didn't know what it was yet. She couldn't articulate it. But something in her world was off, and her soul knew it. So I planted the first seed, you and Jake doing okay. I asked one day over coffee, like it was a throwaway comment. She hesitated, smiled, then looked away. Yeah, of course, just life, marriage stuff. Anything I can help with? No, it's just nothing big. But I could see it, the tightness in her voice, the quiet pull in her shoulders. She wanted to talk. But she didn't know what she was feeling. That was when I knew I had to make her see it for herself. So I gave her time and I gave her space. And then I gave her something else. A reason to visit Jake's office unexpectedly. It was simple, really. I knew Elinor and Jake often met there. Her charity work. She'd always claimed she was downtown helping some nonprofit when in reality, she was at Jake's office or his apartment. I had the timestamps, the proof. So I told Claire, calmly and naturally, that her mother had seemed a little off lately. I said over lunch one afternoon. She told me she was at the library the other day. But I could have sworn I saw her car parked in that new lot near Jake's building. Claire tilted her head. Jake's office, are you sure? I might be wrong, but it stuck in my head. You know how moms are, always helping everyone but never telling anyone. I smiled. Harmless, light, but the look on Claire's face shifted. Something clicked. A puzzle piece moved. I didn't say anything more. I didn't need to. The next day, I got a call from Claire. Her voice was different, shaken, dead-eye. I stopped by Jake's office today. My heart started pounding, but I kept my tone flat. Oh yeah, everything okay. She didn't answer right away, and when she did, her voice cracked. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. Their cars were both there. His, hers, and I waited for 20 minutes. I just waited, and they came out together, laughing, talking. She fixed his collar, Dad, like he was her husband. She touched him like he belonged to her. She started crying. And I felt something inside me twist, not pain this time, validation. I'm so sorry, sweetheart. I said and meant every word. But this wasn't the end. This was just the beginning, because now Claire knew. And when someone you love discovers the truth, not through confrontation, not through second-hand gossip, but by witnessing it with their own eyes, something changes inside them forever. That night, she came over. We sat in the kitchen, just the two of us. She had no makeup on. Her eyes were red. She looked 10 years older than the last time I saw her. How long? She asked me. How long have you known? I hesitated. Then told her everything, not with drama, not with anger, just the truth. The phone calls, the GPS. The whispers through the window. I showed her the printouts. I let her hold the weight of the evidence in her own hands. She didn't say much after that. But when she stood up, I saw it in her posture. The collapse was over. Now she wanted justice, and I was going to give it to her. But it wasn't going to be a shouting match. It wasn't going to be chaos. It was going to be a mirror, held up to both of them in public, in daylight. Where there would be no place left to hide. Claire didn't want revenge, not in the way you might think. She didn't want to scream at them. She didn't want to throw a drink in someone's face or burn their clothes on the lawn. She just wanted them to feel what she had felt, confusion, disbelief, and that unbearable moment when the truth chokes you from the inside out. I want her to see my face, she said. I want them to see what they've done. I want to see them try to explain it. We didn't rush. We gave them time to keep meeting, keep lying, keep thinking the world was theirs. Meanwhile, Claire and I planned. Jake's birthday was coming up. They were planning a small gathering, just family. The kind of intimate, polite celebration that made me want to vomit. They had no idea we knew that was our advantage. Jake sent out the invites himself, even called me personally. It's just a small dinner, he said. Claire wants to keep it low. Key, you and Elinor should definitely come. The way he said you and Elinor, so casual, like she wasn't the woman he was desecrating our family with. I said yes, of course. Told him I was looking forward to it. And I was, but not for the reasons he thought. We had one rule that night. No outbursts, no yelling, no public scene. This wasn't about theatrics. This was about truth, and the truth doesn't need to scream. It just needs to be seen. Claire chose the location, Jake's favorite Italian place, the one they used to go to for anniversaries and quiet dinners. She made the reservation, requested a specific table, one near the windows, with just enough light to see every expression clearly. The guest list was small. Me, Claire, Elinor, Jake, and Claire's best friend, Allison, who had no idea what was about to happen, but agreed to come when Claire said she needed emotional backup, just in case. We arrived in stages. I got there first. Claire came 10 minutes later, looking calm, composed, dead in the eyes. Jake and Elinor walked in together, laughing, that laugh that shared intimacy between them, so unashamed, so natural, I almost forgot to breathe. Elinor saw me and waved. Jake greeted Claire with a kiss on the cheek, like everything was normal. Like he wasn't about to feel his entire world collapse beneath his feet. We ordered wine, made small talk. Talked about the food, the weather, some local council scandal. And then Claire nodded at me. It was time. She reached into her purse and placed a small stack of papers on the table. Phone records, printouts, receipts, and finally a photo I didn't even know she had taken, Elinor's hand on Jake's chest, fixing his collar outside his office. Elinor's face in mid-smile, Jake's in mid-lie. Silence fell over the table. Jake stared at the documents like they were in another language. Elinor didn't blink, not at first. Then she looked up at Claire. What is this? Claire's voice didn't shake. It's what you've been doing behind my back, both of you. Claire, Jake started, but she held up her hand. Don't. You had your chance to be honest. Now you're going to sit there and live in the consequences. Elinor looked at me then. There was something in her eyes, not guilt, fear, not because I was angry, but because she saw that I wasn't. I was calm, and that terrified her more than rage ever could. Thomas, please, she whispered, this isn't what you think. I'm not here to talk. I said, staring right at her. I'm here to witness. And then Claire did the final thing that sealed everything. She stood up, turned to Allison, and said, let's go. I don't need to sit here anymore. She didn't cry. She didn't shout. She just left them there in their silence, in their shame, surrounded by receipts and red wine. Jake didn't follow her. Elinor didn't stand up. They just sat there, and I stayed seated too, for a moment longer, watching them crumble in real time. Because sometimes justice doesn't look like war. Sometimes it looks like two people realizing they lost everything they never appreciated. And then I stood. I walked out of that restaurant without looking back. I didn't sleep that night either. But not because I was hurting. I was clear. For the first time in months, maybe years, I could hear my own thoughts again without the static of doubt and suspicion. There was no more wondering, no more checking her phone bill or watching her glance at the clock. No more pretending. It was over, not in the explosive way people imagine when they talk about betrayal. No shouting match, no broken glass or slammed doors. Just silence, and sometimes silence is the loudest ending of all. The next morning, Elinor called. 8 times I didn't answer. She texted, then emailed. The messages were long, frantic, apologetic, swearing it wasn't what it looked like, that it just happened, that it was a mistake, a phase, a weakness, that she still loved me, that I was her husband, that it didn't mean anything. It didn't mean anything. That's what they always say. But it meant enough for her to risk everything, her marriage, her daughter's trust, our family name, for private lunches, whispered lies, and whatever comfort she found in Jake's arms. So I didn't respond. I didn't owe her my outrage. She didn't deserve my explanation. She had chosen her path. Now she could walk it alone. Jake didn't call me directly. He messaged Claire a few times. Short, pitiful things. Please, can we talk? I need to explain. You have no idea what your mom and I have been through. That last one. That one made me laugh, a bitter, hollow kind of laugh, like somehow he was the victim, like this whole thing was some twisted love story and not a betrayal of the two people who trusted them most. Claire blocked him. She stayed with me for a while after that, just a few weeks to catch her breath, clear her head. She didn't talk about them much, just said she needed space, and I gave it to her. She spent her mornings in silence, took long walks, stared out the window like she was watching pieces of herself float away, trying to figure out which ones were worth picking back up. I didn't try to fix it. Sometimes a father's job isn't to solve the pain, it's just to stand beside it. So I made coffee. I cooked her favorite meals. I put gas in her car. And I reminded her, every single day, that the actions of two selfish people didn't define her. They didn't take away her worth. They didn't dim her light. She began to heal slowly, started painting again, started talking more, started laughing, not much, but sometimes. And one evening, while we were sitting on the porch watching the sun dip behind the trees, she said something I'll never forget. You know what hurts the most, not that he cheated, not even that it was Mom. What hurts is that I thought I was safe. I thought my family was my shelter. I nodded. My throat tightened. You still are, I said. You still have me, and I'm still here. You're not alone. We didn't talk much after that. We didn't need to. The wound was open, but it was finally breathing. No more infection, just healing. Elena moved out a few days after the dinner. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't need to. I found her wedding ring on the nightstand. No note, just the ring, cold, lifeless, like our marriage had been for a long time. I stared at it for a while, then put it in the back of a drawer. Not out of grief, just closure. Jake, he left town about a month later. Quit his job. Word got around, not because I told anyone, but because secrets have a way of leaking when the people who guard them start slipping. Last I heard, he moved in with a friend 2 states over, lost most of his clients, burned too many bridges. I didn't gloat, I didn't celebrate, I just moved on. I started taking long drives again, not to escape this time, but to remember who I was before all this. Before the betrayal, before the lies, before I stopped recognizing my own home, I joined a hiking group. Took a woodworking class, reconnected with a few old friends I hadn't seen since retirement. I was still me. Scarred, sure, but still me. And I'll tell you something I never expected to feel after all of this gratitude. Not for the betrayal, but for the clarity it gave me, because when someone shows you who they are behind your back, it frees you. It hurts like hell, but it frees you. And when you walk away not in bitterness, but in peace, there's no weight heavier than the silence you leave behind. I didn't rush the healing. There's a strange pressure that comes after heartbreak. People expect you to bounce back. To go out, meet someone new, get over it. But some things don't need to be gotten over. They need to be walked through. One slow step at a time. There were days when the house felt too quiet, when the silence echoed in every room Elena used to occupy. Her laughter used to fill the kitchen, the hallway, the patio, and then, just like that, it was gone. But instead of trying to replace that silence, I learned to sit in it, to let it teach me. There's a truth I came to understand in those quiet mornings. Sometimes the life we thought we wanted was never meant for us. And it's okay to let it go. I started tending to the garden again, one of those things I used to do back when life felt simpler. The earth became therapy. Dirt under my nails felt more real than any handshake I'd made in a decade. The flowers bloomed slowly, quietly, kind of like me. Claire eventually moved back into her own place. She hugged me tight the day she left. "Thank you for being my safe place, Dad." That's all she said. But it was enough. I think that was the moment I realized that even though my marriage ended, I hadn't failed. Because love, real love, had survived. Not in the romantic form that betrayed me, but in the family that endured. The trust that remained, the bond that didn't break, even when everything else did. One afternoon, I ran into an old friend at the hardware store. He hadn't heard the full story, only bits and pieces. "You doing all right?" he asked. I could have lied. Could have brushed it off, but instead I just said, "Yeah, I'm healing, and I'm lighter than I've been in years." He smiled, nodded. Sometimes life has to break wide open before the light gets in. And he was right. Because the truth is, betrayal didn't destroy me. It revealed me. It stripped away everything false, everything forced, everything heavy. It gave me back me. I started volunteering at a local shelter once a week. Nothing dramatic, just showing up, cooking, listening, helping. There's something deeply healing about helping others when your own heart is still stitching itself back together. It reminded me that we're all just trying to make it through something. And somewhere along the way, I stopped thinking about Eleanor. She became a name, not a wound, a chapter, not a sentence. And Jake, he became exactly what he always was, a weak man hiding behind charm and opportunity. He didn't win. He didn't break me. He simply gave me back the parts of myself I had given away too easily. Now, when I wake up, I don't reach for my phone to check if she's texted. I make coffee. I open the blinds. I listen to birdsong. I stretch. I pray. I exist, fully without wondering who's lying to me, without questioning my worth. There's a sacred kind of strength that comes from being betrayed and still choosing peace. And if you're listening to this, if you've been betrayed, hurt, discarded, let me tell you something from a man who lost everything and gained something better. You will survive. You'll cry, you'll ache. You'll doubt everyone for a while. But then you'll rise, not in rage, but in resilience. Not in revenge, but in renewal. Because what broke you wasn't stronger than what's always been inside you. And when you finally rebuild, when the dust settles and your soul breathes again, you'll look in the mirror and realize they didn't destroy you. They freed you, and then, one morning, a year and some months after the day everything fell apart, I met someone. Not in a dramatic movie, scene kind of way. There was no slow motion moment, no music swelling in the background. Just a quiet coffee shop, a foggy Tuesday morning, and two people reaching for the same lid at the cream and sugar counter. Her name was Rachel. She laughed, embarrassed, as our hands bumped. I smiled, offered the lid, and said something painfully ordinary, like, "Looks like you're as undercaffeinated as I am." She laughed again, but this time it wasn't polite, it was real. Full. It filled the space like sunlight through a window you forgot to open for months. We talked awkwardly at first. I learned she was a literature professor, recently moved into town after a long, quiet divorce of her own. No drama, no scandal, just two people who grew apart until there was nothing left to say. She understood silence, not the awkward kind, but the meaningful kind. We ended up sitting at a corner table for almost 2 hours that day, talking about books, music, regret, grief, hope. It's strange, she said, how some people leave you with wounds and others they just sit beside you while you heal. That line stayed with me. We didn't rush it. I didn't pursue her like I had something to prove. I wasn't looking to replace Eleanor. I wasn't searching to fill the void. I was finally whole. Rachel wasn't a rescue. She was a reflection of how far I had come, of who I had become, of what I was now worthy of, because I had learned to be worthy of myself. Our relationship grew like ivy on old brick, slow, natural, with roots that knew how to hold on. We both had cracks. We didn't hide them. We showed each other the fractures, the scar tissue, the spots that still stung when touched. "You're safe here," I told her once when she shared something raw from her past. She reached across the table, touched my hand, and said, "So are you." And I believed her. For the first time in years, I believed someone, not because they promised me forever, but because they honored my present. My daughter Claire met Rachel a few months later. There was that nervous pause parents know all too well, the kind that says please, just like each other. But they did instantly. Rachel didn't try too hard. She didn't insert herself. She just showed up. And Claire, being the strong-hearted young woman she is, saw Rachel for what she was, kind, grounded, honest. Later, Claire pulled me aside and said, "She's good for you, Dad. You smile differently now." That hit me, because for the longest time I didn't think I'd smile like that again. We didn't move in together right away. We didn't start picking wedding venues or ring styles. We just lived fully present, grateful. Sometimes love doesn't come to save you. Sometimes it comes after you've already saved yourself, and that's what Rachel was. Not a new beginning, but a beautiful continuation. And as for Eleanor, I saw her once, months after Rachel and I had started seeing each other. She was standing in line at a grocery store alone, looking down at her phone. I watched her from behind, silent, steady. She looked smaller somehow, not physically, but smaller in my memory, less towering, less tragic, just human. And I realized in that moment I didn't hate her. I didn't need an apology. I didn't even need closure. Because I had already found it not in her words, but in my peace. I turned and walked out without saying a thing. That was the most powerful thing I'd done all year, because real strength is quiet. It's walking away when you've already won the war within yourself. And I had won. Life became simple after that. Not because everything was perfect, it never really is, but because I had finally stopped trying to control every outcome, every emotion, every person. I had learned that you can survive things you once thought would break you. I had learned that betrayal doesn't have to define you, it can refine you. I had learned that sometimes the people you love the most will be the ones to hurt you the deepest. And yet you can still rise, you can still rebuild, you can still love again, not just others, but yourself. Rachel and I started traveling together, not far, not flashy, just quiet escapes, coastal towns, rainy mountains, cabins with creaky floors and warm fireplaces. We read books beside each other in silence. We watched documentaries and cried at the same scenes. We shared meals that took hours to prepare and only minutes to finish. And we laughed at how life used to be so fast, so loud, so urgent. Now it was gentle, now it was ours. Sometimes, while we're sitting by the fire or walking barefoot along the beach, Rachel reaches for my hand and says softly, "I'm proud of you." I never really knew how much I needed those words until I heard them from someone who saw me. Not the version of me that had to prove something. Not the man who had been betrayed. Not the father who had been humiliated. Just me. She didn't fall in love with my wounds. She didn't fix me. She loved me after I had done the work. After I had buried the bitterness. After I had cried the last angry tear for Eleanor. After I had forgiven not just her, but myself. That's the part people don't talk about often. The self-forgiveness. Because deep down, even if you've been wronged, you carry guilt. You question your choices. You replay moments where you should have seen it, stopped it, said something. But life isn't a movie where you can rewind and edit the scene. Life is messy, and it's in that mess that you find your strength. One evening, Claire, my daughter, came over for dinner. She'd brought a stack of old photos she found while cleaning her closet. Most of them were from when she was little, beach days, birthdays, her first day of school. She handed me one I hadn't seen in years. It was of me, Eleanor, and Claire, standing under a waterfall on a family trip. I looked at it for a long time, and then I smiled, not because I missed it, not because I wanted it back, but because I had made peace with it. It was a memory, not a prison, and that's when I knew I was free. I placed the photo in a drawer, not to forget it, but to honor it as part of the journey. Because healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means learning how to live with it without letting it haunt you. And if you're still listening to my story, maybe you're in your own valley right now. Maybe someone close to you betrayed you. Maybe you're living through silence, through suspicion, through shame. Maybe you're standing outside your own metaphorical window, hearing something that's breaking your world apart. If you aren't, I want you to know this. You will survive. You might not believe it now, but you will. You might not know how, but you will find a way. The tears will slow, the ache will soften, the noise will quiet down, and you'll find yourself one day smiling at something small, a breeze, a song, a stranger's kindness, and realize, I made it. You won't be the same, but you will be stronger, and maybe, just maybe, happier. Not because life gave you everything you wanted, but because you learned to live with what was left, and still choose joy. That's what I did, and if I can do it, a man who stood frozen outside a window, hearing his world collapse, then so can you. This is not the end of your story. This is your turning point. So take the pain and build with it. Because one day your healing will become someone else's hope. And so life carried on not like a parade, but more like a slow dance under a dim light. The kind where you stumble at first, unsure if the music will carry you, unsure if your feet even remember how to move. But over time you learn, you trust again, you breathe again. I didn't become a perfect man after all that happened. No, I still had moments of doubt. Sometimes I'd drive past familiar streets and feel a flicker of pain, like a ghost brushing my shoulder, reminders of who I was, what I went through, and what I almost became. But I didn't stay there. That was the difference. I no longer made a home out of pain. One day, I ran into my son-in-law, Mark, at a local hardware store. It had been almost 2 years. He looked older, tired, worn. He walked up to me, hesitant, eyes down. "Can I speak to you?" he asked quietly. I paused, not out of anger but caution. He began speaking not with excuses, but with regret. He said, Eleanor left him shortly, after everything blew up. He said his life never quite found its footing again. He said he didn't expect forgiveness, but he needed to say sorry. And in that moment, standing between aisles of paint and power tools, I looked at him, not as the man who betrayed me, but as a man who was broken, just like I had once been. I said, you were wrong. What you did tore my life apart. But I'm not carrying that with me anymore, and I hope one day you don't either. He nodded, eyes misty, and walked away, and you know what? I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel vengeful. I felt free. That's when I realized true revenge is not in someone else's downfall. It's in your own rise. It's not about them suffering. It's about you healing. And healing doesn't come in big, loud moments. It comes in the quiet victories. It comes when you walk into your home and it no longer feels haunted. It comes when you can hear her name and your chest doesn't tighten. It comes when you laugh, really laugh, and realize it's not forced anymore. It comes when you look in the mirror and you like the man looking back. And now I live differently. Not cautiously, but intentionally. I protect my peace. I don't ignore red flags. I listen more, not just to others, but to myself. And I love more deeply, not recklessly, not out of fear, but with truth. Rachel and I are still together. We adopted a dog last fall, Buddy, a rescue with cloudy eyes and a tail that never stops wagging. We take long walks. We cook together. We read poetry on Sunday mornings. It's not glamorous, but it's real. And sometimes, That's the greatest reward. Not having everything you ever wanted, but finally having something you never thought you could have again, peace. So to you, listening now, wherever you are in your story, hear this from someone who's walked through fire. You are not finished. You are not ruined. You are not unworthy of love or trust or laughter. You are simply becoming, one step at a time. One day at a time, and one healed wound at a time. They say life is unpredictable, that it throws storms without warning. But what they don't always tell you is that you can survive them. I didn't think I could. When I stood outside that window, hearing the betrayal unfold inside my son in Law's home, something shattered in me that day. I thought that would be the end of who I was: a faithful husband, a loving father, a man who trusted too much and got burned for it. But it wasn't the end. It was the beginning, because pain, as cruel as it feels, is often the doorway to awakening. It forces you to look at who you've become and who you want to be. It pushes you to decide, will I let this define me? Or refine me? And I chose the second. I took the shattered pieces of my former life, and slowly, carefully, I built something new. Not perfect, but honest. Not flashy, but peaceful. And if my story has taught me anything, it's this. Sometimes God allows the ground to shake beneath us, so we stop standing on foundations that were never meant to hold us. Maybe that's what happened to me, and maybe that's what's happening to you right now. So if you're listening to this, still hurting, still in the dark, still wondering why they did it, why they lied, why they hurt you, I want you to know you're not alone. You're not foolish for loving, you're not weak for breaking. You're just human, and there's power in that. Real power, the kind that makes you stand again when everything inside you says stay down. The kind that says, yes, I was betrayed, but I am not broken. So walk forward, even if it's with a limp. Laugh again, even if your voice cracks, and love again, even if your heart still trembles. Because your story isn't over. It's just beginning in a new, stronger, more beautiful chapter. My name is Daniel Harris, and this was how I lost everything I thought mattered, but found everything that truly did. Thank you for listening to my story. If this story touched you, if you've ever been through betrayal, heartbreak, or healing back, and index pointing right comment, I'm still standing. Below, let's show the world how strong we truly are. Thumbs up like this video if you believe in second chances. Bell subscribe for more true, raw, and powerful life stories. Outbox tray share this with someone who needs to hear they're not alone. And remember, sometimes the people who hurt you the most unknowingly lead you to the healing you never knew you needed. Broken, right red will see you in the next story. Stay strong, stay human.